Welcome back to this week's episode of Built and Backed. I'm super excited to have Carla Bayot and Cory Borman joining us today. Carla and Cory are the co-founders of Swoon Learning. As I shared with them before we started recording, I am very excited to have them both on the show because they are our first co-founder duo as podcast guests. So I think this will be a lot of fun to dive into everything that they've been building at Swoon Learning. So Carla and Cory, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Great to be here.
Yeah, it's my pleasure to have you both here. And that's where I'd love to start today is to have you both give an overview of what Swoon Learning is and what inspired you to start it.
Take it
Why don't
away,
you go ahead,
Carla.
Cory?
Oh no, go ahead. It came from your background, so maybe start there, and then we can work into where we met.
Sounds good. As you can tell, this is not scripted.
Totally off the cuff.
So, I actually started Swoon tutoring, and I tutored a handful of kids from this one private school. They found out that what happened, including my daughter, who's now going to UCLA. And what happened was they found out that they lacked the foundation in math. and I was I was tutoring my daughter, and the principal at that school actually asked me if she could do me a favor. And somehow my way of tutoring somehow resounded with the kids, where I try to correlate lesson notes or in-class lecture notes, as well as homework and then how to get ready for the test.
Mhm.
And as years went on, I did this on the side. That's where I met Cory because my full-time job is actually I'm a hardware engineer. I design hardware products with well stealth products that
Mhm.
eventually will get bought. And when I finally decided to close my last startup, I told Cory I'm going to go all in on this tutoring thing, right? I was just thinking tutoring, and I needed some marketing help. I don't know anything about marketing, and I don't know how to market myself, and I don't know how to scale service. And comes in Cory. And Cory, why don't you tell them about what your vision was with collaboration? Because we came from two different mechanics of engineering. He
Mhm.
was in product, and I was product design, and I was more for the hardware, which is application wise.
Yeah, so Carla, like she mentioned, she was more in the application area. I was more in the development. So I worked for Pearson Education for about 5 years, developing different titles under the imprint Peach Pit Press. And so I was very fortunate to be able to learn while I built these titles. I worked with Adobe, Apple. Like anytime a new product came out, whether it's software or hardware, we would do a how-to book on the technology. And lucky me, I was able to read the entire book while I was producing it. And so when I got into education, uh, education's a bit of a laggard on the adoption curve. So I'm more of a forward thinker. So I come from software development and software design, product design, product development. I'm more on the top of the stack with the human computer interaction layer. Carla's more kind of, on the bottom of the stack with like the databasing and whatnot. So we don't really cross over, which is great for co-founders because I know that there's a lot of times when co-founders cross over their strengths and skills, and
Oh yeah.
sometimes that can be a real hindrance to moving the company forward. So we did notice that and recognize that when we worked together, where we met at Anova, which is not an education um, company per se, but it is in food education. So it's a little bit different. It's not academic education. Um, so when we met at Anova, which was about 2014, I want to say,
Yeah.
probably somewhere around there, I was doing a lot of software development. So I was running the software team, and Carla was doing hardware. So again, we didn't really cross over. We were able to complement our skills. So my vision has always been how to scale certain things, and Carla's more rooted in um, development of hardware. So it has like three development cycles where, and Carla can explain that more if you want to know more, Ashley. But it has a very minimal hardware. It has a very minimal development cycle where software is it's continuous, right? Like it never ends. And it tends to break a lot more too. So, but what I noticed being in software development and running the team at Swoon Learning, or sorry, at Anova, where Carla and I met, I noticed that you could scale things and you can get multipliers, in valuation, and you can have multipliers in a company as well. So scaling what Carla was doing at Swoon Tutoring was a little bit of a challenge because you can't really clone humans. I mean, maybe we can now. Actually, I'm sure we probably can. I haven't seen it, so like it's like I don't know if I believe it quite yet. But we can't clone Carla, and we can't clone what she brings to the table. So I recognized that I really wanted to, because I respect Carla, and the work that she's done in the past is very impressive. And so when she came to me, she kind of just sent me a text, and I remember it said something like, can you do SEO for me, for tutoring? And I was like, okay.
I had no idea what that was.
Yeah, right. She's
like, I'm
asking
just
me
throwing
to do
this
something.
acronym out here.
Yeah,
Totally.
exactly. So she said to me, can you do SEO? And I was like, okay. Well, I gave her a call. I was like, well, what are you doing? What are you working on? Because I was kind of in the middle of moving from a digital marketing company that I had before into something back into education, because I really love education. Both Carla and I love to learn. So I got on the phone, gave her a call, and I said, what are you doing? She said, I'm doing this tutoring thing, and I want to just kind of pick it up a little bit more. And I said, well, why don't we do something together? And so we kind of talked for a few months actually, and then finally we kind of came to this conclusion, like, yeah, let's go in and do this. So we started Swoon Learning because the vision comes down to being able to take Carla's and make, somewhat versions of them with our academic coaches, which is what we call our tutors. Because not only do we work with subject matter, they're not just subject matter experts, but they're also life skills experts. So we kind of marry these two with executive function skills, which a lot of people don't have, let alone, kids. So we saw an angle for that as well, and saw an opportunity to not only deliver the subject matter expertise, but also this kind of life skills as well, with like weekly planning, prioritization, organization, scheduling, things that seem trivial, but are really, a challenge for a lot of people and children specifically. So we saw the ability to take Carla, and Carla does a wonderful job finding other academic coaches who are a lot like her, and she sets them up to be successful. And then we use our platform, Swoon Front Office, with Swoon Assist, to get them on board and doing all of those executive function, scheduling, work. We have a thing called work board. We have a thing called a plan board for our teachers, so they can plan things out, or our academic coaches, so they can plan things out and then deliver them to the students' work boards. So we kind of assist with the organization and the planning. But that's where I saw the scale could happen. And Carla, it took her a while to kind of see the vision, because she's not into software as much, but now she like totally understands it. And we're really working on building this software to scale the company and scale the Carla.
That's amazing. I love that you took Swoon tutoring and then we're like, wait a second, there's something bigger that we can create out of this, and then turned it into Swoon Learning. And that was so funny with Carla saying like, do you do SEO? Can you help me with that? And now it turned into this whole startup. Like, did you think that would happen, Carla, that Cory would join your business? Or like, I'm curious to hear what that was like.
Well, to kind of step back to Cory was saying, what we never cross paths in Silicon Valley. Cross paths meaning, our work, right?
Mm-hmm.
Are we actually working together? But the funny thing is, Cory like sat next to me. We see each other all the time, so
Yeah.
I kind of knew what he was doing, and that's the great thing about Silicon Valley startups, is that innovation does start here, but also there's a lot of collaboration, of the melding of the minds, and you kind of learn what each other is doing. I mean, we have a few friends at Anova who we still keep in touch with, and they're amazing people. But what I'm trying to say is that, yes, I did not think that this was how tutoring was going to be. But I did know that someday in the future, Cory and I will work together again. I just didn't know in what capacity,
Hmm.
right? And as you mentioned, when you scale a company or when you scale a product in hardware, it's very minimal. There's like version control. And in software, there are just so many moving variables, and you want to somehow um, you know, do better than the last iteration. But the main thing for us is that how do we keep the quality that I expect, that I sell when I'm talking to a parent, maintain that quality. And so every day we're iterating, and people forget that um, products are, well, software products in general are living documents, right? And even ourselves, we're living documents. And so the more I actually talk to these parents, the more I realize that the niche that we bring in is that we are also introducing them with a technology that will maintain the quality,
Hmm.
or help maintain that quality, because it's so hard to even help maintain that quality inside a classroom. What more for at home? So what we do is we kind of bridge that gap between the school and the home, so that in a way we're like therapists for the parents,
Yeah.
educational therapists for the parents.
But it's almost
And
like sorry, Carl, I just want to add to that. It's almost like a trickle up instead of a trickle down, though, because like if we're what Carla's saying is like we're kind of a concierge life coach
yes,
service, but that
Mm.
actually trickles up to the parents we see a lot more, or trickles up to the students, right? Instead of the parents trickling it down, those life skills down to the students.
because I'm sure you've heard of that, right? The concierge services.
Yes.
I had no idea what that meant until we started Swoon Learning.
Hmm.
People would come to us and say, do you need a concierge service? And I was, what's a in my head, a concierge service is in a hotel, right? And
Hmm.
it makes sense in our case, because the concierge service for us is actually helping the parents understand that they're helping the kids. So we're like indirectly helping. But in the meantime, our main focus is the children. It's not really the parents. Our main
Yeah.
focus is, because I think that's the part that people forget, is that, okay, well, I'm really scared about my child's development. If she's scared, the kid's more scared.
Hmm.
But you just don't know how it sounds like, right? But our tutors, who we call academic coaches, are able to pull that out. And our AI, our transcription AI, actually are able to sometimes guess if there's a mental health issue that's happening.
Oh,
It's not
wow.
it's not 100%. I'm just saying is that there's a
Yeah.
transcription there where it tells you um that the transcription will tell you if they're getting stressed. So it may not be immediately like the clinical sense of mental health, but it could be a start where they're anxious. They don't know how to remain focused. They don't
Hmm.
know how to understand. Case in point, one of our coaches, who is not at all a special ed expert, but she does recognize dyslexia based on just the words that the student is saying, and based
Hmm.
on what he's writing, because we have a thing called OKIO which is a desktop camera. And so she sees that the kid is like mixing up letters. Another kid is mixing up words because they sound the same. But in his head, there's a lot of these things, and we're not at all experts on it, but our transcription is getting that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, especially too. It sounds like a great supplement for teachers where, at least here in Massachusetts, I mean, a classroom might have 25 kids, which is a lot, and there's only one teacher. So it sounds like having something like Swoon Learning would help to detect things like that. If there's some struggles or challenges that a teacher might not pick up on right away, Swoon Learning can really identify that through your AI. Is that right, would you say?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we are beta testing that right now. I can't really say what the school is yet, but we're beta testing that to a point where we do want to be the teacher's assistant.
Hmm.
We don't want to take over the teacher. There's no such thing as like a talking head from a computer. There's still something about being able to have the teacher have the
mechanics of teaching, but also have the technology assisting, right? And so yes, that is absolutely the one model we have is one model we have is the one-on-one tutoring, which is kind of is pretty much 80% there
Mhm.
as far
Yeah,
as the software.
we want the software to be a supplement, not a replacement. We
Yep.
always want to keep the human. So our philosophy, our kind of big philosophy is no admin, but we want to keep the human at the center so that they can actually have Swoon front office and Swoon Assist do the work while they're working, so they don't have to have the admin work before and after. We can take care of a lot of that work, but it keeps the instructor, whether it's an academic coach or a teacher, on task and available to do their job and to do it really well. Because there's like a 3-to-1 administrator to teacher ratio right now,
Yeah.
at least in public education. This is a research paper that was, I don't remember exactly what it is. I could maybe send that to you, like afterwards. But on
Mhm.
how the teachers aren't getting resources because of this administrative problem,
Mhm.
this
This,
administrative
yeah,
bloat, I should say. So we want to reduce that. That's kind of our big, it's what we call a big, hairy, audacious goal. So is to eliminate a lot of that administrative burden so that the teachers can, just do the work that they really love to do and why they went into teaching, right?
yep,
Yeah, that's a great way to phrase it because I mean, think about, I have a sister who's a teacher, so coming home and doing all the admin work after school because she just doesn't have time for it. So being able to have Swoon Learning and its platform to be able to alleviate it and take and open up more time for more of like the actual teaching and whatnot, I think is really, really great that you're providing there.
absolutely. That's the
Yeah,
goal. That's the
yeah.
hope.
Totally. And I'm curious to hear, so it sounds like that Swoon Learning was started after the pandemic and having friends and siblings who are teachers, like tutoring was something that was so needed during that time because of not having like the in-person stuff. And so I'm curious to hear how you found that as an opportunity as you built out this platform.
Actually, it's interesting you say that because people always ask me, did this start because of the pandemic? No, it started before the pandemic, which was in
Interesting.
2017.
Wow.
And at that time, Cory and I were working at Anova, and we were kind of early adopters of Zoom because Zoom at that time was just like taking over the word Skype. Remember
Yeah,
Skype?
Skype was
Yes.
on the
Long
way
time
out.
ago.
Throwback.
So so even when I was traveling to Asia, I had my own Zoom, and Anova actually had their own Zoom too. But I was already a beta tester for Zoom, and I would use it with my clients because I was a uh, contract for hire for startups, and I would use Zoom to do remote working and stuff. But I also used my Zoom to tutor.
Mhm.
So kids, I would actually buy my own Zoom and have the parents download the free Zoom because as long as there's one person buying the Zoom, it'll be fine, right? And that's how I kept on doing the whole tutoring, even when I was in Taiwan or if I'm in Shanghai, that I understood that learning is continuous and it's not the kid's fault why I'm going to be in China. So there's this continuity of learning.
Mhm.
And so yes, the pandemic was just as if it was the launch pad for Swoon Learning, but Swoon Tutoring was using Zoom for the longest time. I was using
Yes.
OkioCam. I was using my own kind of like OkioCam, but it's not called OkioCam. It's just called a desktop camera. And so I utilized what we already had. And I hate the fact that there's all these technology and the technology is not being utilized by the schools in
Mhm.
in the right flow, right? There's a flow. You can have all the applications you have to produce a great way of education online. But if you don't have the right flow, then it's just a bunch of stuff. right? So that's really
Right.
important.
Yeah, and that's a good point that you bring up about not like the schools not using the technology that they could, because that's something I hear often is that schools often are like a little bit closed off to wanting to like
Oh
try
yeah.
new things, or it's like hard to just even open the conversation of, hey, we have this software or platform that could really benefit you. And so I'm curious to hear how you were able to get into that, like build that credibility with schools and open their minds a little bit to considering something like Swoon.
Well, there's a lot of TLC, actually. And the main issue, what Cory was saying is that when Swoon tutoring was just a tutoring portion of it, I did a lot of summary, I did a lot of like follow up, I did a lot of like checking in and all these things. And as far as like how teachers are inundated and how the principals are also in a nightmare of what if these kids are not actually being helped. But we have one principal who is very, very understanding and very empathetic with the kids, and she had no ego. She had no ego that she had 10 kids who were struggling. And she didn't blame the system, she didn't blame the teachers. She just said to me that each kid needs their own TLC. And that's why she asked me, can you do this? Right? Can you help? Can you help this kid? And so when we first started that conversation, that relationship, it was more like she will throw a couple of kids to me. And then later on, then there's four. And then there's five. And then all of a sudden she's putting us in a newsletter if you need extra swoon help. So that's the one thing that I've learned in startup is there is always about the vendor relationship. And uh, when we were working at Anova, Steve was so good at that. Steve, our CEO at that time, and he was so good at the vendor relationship. And every CEO in the Silicon Valley are very, very good with those relationship building. And I just utilize what I learned from what I saw, what I witnessed with other CEOs, and why they're so successful. Is you really have to take care and be comfortable knowing that you're going to need this person someday. There's going to be a need. And that's what I did. So we honed that for like almost 10 years, starting with
Wow.
Swoon Tutoring. And today, as we speak, we're now incubating inside it.
Yeah, and
And
something, sorry, Carla.
no, go ahead, go ahead.
So something that I recognized with Carla is that she was able to, well, she's very, very, very intelligent. So that I like to associate myself with people that I can learn things from. So I do look up to Carla quite a bit. She might not know that, but I'm serious about it. So there's a
Thank you.
lot of things that Carla's done that I just find mind blowing. Like the places that she's worked and the people that she's worked with. So I'm very fortunate to have met her at Anova. But then when I learned about how she was tutoring with Zoom, it really caught my attention too, because I thought, well, how can she be doing all of this really great stuff with Anova, and then on the side she's helping kids pass their tests and get better grades and keeping them on track. I'm like, there's something really impressive about that, because here she is in kind of the physical world, and then she jumps over into the virtual world. So like, when is she sleeping, right? When is she not working? But that's something that I recognized or noticed, was that the work that she does isn't necessarily work. Like, it's a passion of hers. And there's this Jim Collins concept called the hedgehog concept. And it's a Venn diagram. So it's got three concentric circles. And I think about this all the time. It's something that Steve at Anova, the CEO, taught me. And I really cherished it and kind of like used it and repeat it to everybody. But the three circles are, what are you most passionate about? What can be an economic driver? So what can you actually make money doing it? And what do you truly believe that you can be the best in the world at? And when I saw Carla working with the kids via Zoom, because I watched, quite a few of those videos to kind of get a product baseline, so that I could help, from my expertise in developing the software product. I realized that you can continue education via video, right? But like Carla was saying, you have to have the right tools. So a lot of these institutions, given that they are somewhat laggards, I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean that on like an adoption curve perspective, right? There's like an actual term for that, right? They're past the late majority. They're more like late majority laggards. But there's a reason for that. It's not like personality traits or anything like that, right? And there's a reason for it. There's a lot of there's a lot of bureaucracy, red tape that happens in schools, whether it's public
Oh yeah.
school or private school. Like, it doesn't really matter, right? And a lot of it comes from, Carla and I just got done talking about this, but a lot of it comes from, well, most of it comes from funding source, right? So you have a private school that has private funding, grants, stuff like that. And then you have public school, which has grants and public funding. So it's, it makes it very challenging. Sorry. Can you hear that? Okay, great. You can edit that out, but I just want to make sure the blower's like right by my door. So like I try to
No,
avoid
you're
it.
good.
I actually didn't hear anything.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So yeah, so these schools, they have they're somewhat governed, right? Whether it's a private institution, small, medium, large, it doesn't matter, or it's a public institution, small, medium, or large. I mean, usually they're more medium and large, but they have some governance that they have to abide by. So where Carla talks about the vendor relationships, getting into a public institution and having a vendor relationship it's an exclusivity right into a public, and you're kind of locked in once you're in. And so that's where we've been very fortunate to be able to have learners, students from these certain institutions that Carla has really good vendor relationships with, because they trust us and we trust them, right? We're gonna provide excellent service to them, and they're gonna give us the kids who really need the help. But a lot of these institutions, specifically the public institutions who are more governed during the time of COVID, and I know Carla had mentioned that this had happened before COVID, but that was really an on-ramp to virtual education, right? They were just thrown into it. They didn't really have much of a choice to do this because of a lot of the mandates, a lot of the mask mandates and the in-person mandates and the distancing mandates. So they were kind of thrown into this whole new virtual world of education. So they didn't really have a foothold on what to do or even how to do it. And it's really easy for somebody who doesn't know about something or doesn't know how to do something or who's unfamiliar with the process to say, I don't want to do this. This is really hard, right?
Yeah.
But we know it takes time. It takes time and it takes continual effort. And unfortunately, it takes a lot of failures, right? And we can maybe package that word into challenges, right? It takes a lot of challenges, and it's a build, test, learn cycle, which is what we try to implement in our workflow with front office and Swoon Assist. Is on our work board, it's you literally kind of set up what you need to do and you move it to done. And once it's done, right? But it's chunking. So we break things down into small, manageable chunks, just like you do in hardware development, just like you do in software development.
Yeah, it's important to say that we once you enter the school sphere, I was actually taking notes of it right now because I wanted to ask you: did your sister work at a public or private school, or is she working?
Public.
Okay, yeah. And during the virtual education time, how did she, as as a teacher, felt during that time?
Difficult because she had kindergartners. So that I think that age specifically,
Yeah.
Yeah, I was expecting that.
Oh, they probably know Zoom better though, right?
They're probably pros now.
Yeah, exactly.
So the one thing I've actually learned a lot was the Zoom generation, right? That's when Zoom took off. I mean, if you're looking at stock prices at that time, because I was, we saw how stocks went from $15 to $150, right? And then all of a sudden, virtual learning went down to a standstill. So then Zoom kind of like evened out. What my friend, who at that time was working for the University of California General Counsel, said to me was that, and this resounded in my head because this is just before Cory and I started talking about it. I was ready to pull out my daughter from pull out to do homeschooling.
Mm-hmm.
And this resounded in my head. She said, do not do that. You're going to get left behind. The more you learn about, because I was already doing it, like I said, right? I was doing the Zoom tutoring. The more you learn about this industry and how you can actually bring them to the table is the most important thing, because those are the late majority people in technology.
Mm-hmm.
You got to figure that out. You got to figure out how to actually bring them into the room, sit them in the table, and have them understand that there's education should not be left behind, right? But you have to have the right components. And everybody's thinking about that. Everybody's thinking about Google Classroom. I mean, think about it. Think about all the learning management systems out there. It's not a new wheel, right? So, but what Cory and I are adding is another wheel.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a semi truck now. Before it was just, I don't know, a pickup truck. Now it's a semi truck with a big bed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
so we're just adding to be complementary to, if it's working for one-on-one tutoring, why can't that be scaled into a school?
Right.
Right. And then all of a sudden you see that when the kids are learning in that fashion, now there's a bidirectional response.
Mm-hmm.
You see that the teachers are a lot more responsive because they're seeing the fruits of their labor, right? And
Yeah.
so
And where they're helping.
yeah, and so what we're trying to do is be that aid for the teachers, because we are that aid for the parents at home.
Right.
So if you're looking at segmentation, right? If you have two segments and these two endpoints here have got to meet. And so that's who we want to be, right? So then we get from point A to point C. And I'm putting some math stuff in there. But anyway, but
Yeah.
but
And
but that's pretty much what we're trying to do. We don't want to be the conflict or the threat kind of thing, right? We want to work with people.
absolutely. And on that note, where is Swoon Learning going to go in the next year? If there's any like exciting developments or things that you're working on that you can share and talk about, would love to hear what your product journey looks like in the coming months.
Yeah.
I'll leave that to Cory.
Yeah. So we have an opportunity right now to we have two somewhat different verticals in our business. One is as a supplement to institutions, or small medium SMB schools,
Mm-hmm.
mostly private, and then we also have our tutoring side of things. But it completes a circle, right? It's a full loop, as Carla was explaining previously. So we see education being more hybrid in the future, and not necessarily going back to what it has been, I should say, where it's been somewhat based in the Victorian era, where you have 30 to 1, I mean, it started as like, 5-15. Now it's up to like 30-40 to 1 teacher. I mean, that's just unsustainable. It's absolutely
Mm-hmm.
unsustainable. It's like us trying to clone Carla, right? Like you can't do that. I mean, there's a reason why a lot of teachers have teachers assistants, right? Because it's necessary, right? So with our product, knowing that the school on premises is more likely going to be reduced in subject matter delivery, it's probably going to be a mixture and a hybrid of social emotional learning, which is kind of a thing that a lot of schools do right now. And that's probably not going to be reduced anytime soon, just given all the complexities that are amongst children these days. And of course, that, like I said before, that trickles up to the parents, and it's kind of bi-directional, right? All the complexities and technology that we are bombarded with on a daily basis, I don't think that social emotional learning is really going to go anywhere in the school system, especially in public schools, because they really do push a mental health, right? In private schools, it might be a little bit different because they have a little bit more self-governance, right? So we see the on premises being a little bit more on the SEL side and less on the subject matter delivery. And so that's where Swoon Learning comes in to help, because we can make sure that, just like Carla said, don't take your kid out of school. We don't necessarily want to take kids out of school, but we do need to be privy to the fact that schools are changing and the way that education being delivered is changing as well into this more hybrid approach. So we're kind of on that. Well, we waited for the bubble to kind of, the virtual education bubble to kind of burst, right? And that's why we came in. We didn't ride that wave because we wanted to see what happens, right? We could have easily went 100% into being our own institution. We could have gotten, a .edu URL, and we could have gone, for an institutional license and set our own curriculum. But we didn't see that as being the future. We saw that being, brought back to the schools. And you can actually see that in the marketplace, where a lot of these online schools have gone by the way of the dinosaur, right? They no longer exist. And a lot of the bigger, Southern Hampshire University, I can't remember the name, and like University of Phoenix, like they've reduced their campuses, and they've reduced their offerings considerably because of that bubble bursting. And there's also a ton of other private schools and online schools that have now disappeared as well. So we waited for that to happen. I mean, I think both Carla and I have a beat somewhat. She's got a little bit different beat than I do. She's got a beat on the ground. I got a beat more on the software side of things. Again, we don't cross over, which makes for a good partnership. But where we see front office and with Swoon Assist is, front office is the tool, and we'll continue to be building based off of what jobs need to be done by the teachers, right? So we look at it, we use Professor Clayton Christensen's jobs to be done theory to learn about what teachers or instructors or tutors would hire our software to do. And they could fire us too. But we don't want that, right? So we want to make sure that we're always getting feedback and always learning about what it is they want to hire our software to do. So our roadmap is somewhat limited, but we do know that Swoon Assist, our AI agent, will be it's kind of funny saying this, will be at the forefront, but not really, right? It'll be kind of running in the background at the forefront, surfaced within the application to kind of act as a teacher's assistant. And it already does. But we have so many opportunities to build that out, and so many opportunities to be able to assist educators, whether they're, it's a lot easier doing it through Glass, like where we are, through the internet, and doing it through our academic coaching services. It's a lot more challenging to do it on premises, but we have tools to assist with capturing the environment, so that the teacher or the instructor on premises knows that what Swoon Assist delivers after the class is pretty much exactly what they lectured or what they talked about, within their pre-recorded session or their pre-recorded class. So there's a lot of really cool things that we're doing around Swoon Assist that is going to be extremely assistive in a more like agent manner. And we're not looking to necessarily, actually, I would say that we're looking to replace the teacher's assistant. But we could potentially be augmenting a teacher's assistant. So a teacher's assistant can have, can really focus on the things that the teacher actually needs, right? But they should be working in tandem. It should be a teacher's assistant with Swoon Assist and the teacher, / instructor. So it should be somewhat of a trifecta.
Actually, Ashley, can I add to that?
Yeah, absolutely.
About the future. So it's just like what Cory said in the beginning. Cory and I have a very complementary set of skills, and we're also very complementary in our thinking. We're definitely not two cooks in the kitchen. We have our own separate kitchen. And the one thing I want to say about the future of front office, it's pretty bright if we're looking at it more from what I said, it's a living document.
Mhm.
As opposed to hardware. Hardware is not a living document because hardware, once it's built, you just got to get a new update, like iPhone 16. Now we're in iPhone 17. Next year it'll be iPhone 18.
Yeah.
It's never where the iteration is based on what's happening at the moment on boots on the ground. So for us, it's really the question of once we accomplish our goals of features, they're called features, where okay, now we've done this, the lesson planning to help the teachers figure out that okay, you know what, I don't have to reinvent the wheel next year because I'm teaching the same kind of stuff in kindergarten. So, for
Mhm.
example, for your sister, right? My best friend from college is also a teacher. Well, she's a teacher at East LA, so that's a little scary, but it's a little rougher because she she has to. But the one thing underlying about lesson planning is that you don't have to reinvent the wheel every year. The problem is that teachers do reinvent it every year because they rewrite the whole thing and they have to recall.
Mm-hmm.
What we want to do is we want to create a way where these lesson plans can be archived and reused, but when they reuse it, it iterates. So they can basically iterate on top of what they did last year and recall, oh, you know what? Little Johnny, I remember he had a really hard time holding the pencil. And those are kind of like notes. So that's one way of looking at front office. That is where you want to close the gap,
Mhm.
where I want to say, how do we close the gap in the classroom? It's a 30-to-1 ratio. How do we close the gap that even though there's 30 kids out there, how do we make it 10-to-1,
Mm-hmm.
right? You want to look at the statistics on that kind of premise where your sister is not overwhelmed with 30 kids. Actually, it's not true. It's probably 20 kids, right? Because it's kindergarten.
Mhm.
Yeah, and that's exponential work though too, right?
But it's still more
Right.
work because they're like
Yeah,
little people
yeah,
that you
yeah,
have to
yeah,
really like shape.
Yeah.
yeah.
And the other thing about that is that the complexities of activities balancing academics is a big deal. And how do you balance all of that where we can contribute to it? So front office doesn't really contribute to kind of telling them, oh, you should do this, you should do that. What we can do from the quality of academic coaches we have is that we contribute by telling them, okay, do you think you can do your homework here or before this? Front office can eventually do that, where there's the AI component, right? There's just so many things. There's just so many things that are unanswered, and it'll be beyond our lifetime
Mhm.
to really fully answer this because you need a cognitive conversation with a tool to say, okay, how far are you from getting that A? I mean, have you ever had that question in school when you were going to school where you're wondering, oh my God, where do I need to work? What else is left in the
Mhm.
percentage for me to get that A? I'm getting an 88. And instead, you know what we do? We go to our professor and I said, my professor in physics, I was always getting an A. And I said, what can I do? Can you show me I can do? But you know what? He couldn't because there's no tool out there that lets you know, oh, if you just turn in your homework, if you just do this a little bit on your test, um, this is how you can uh, you can improve.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
So there's just so many constructive things that we can do, constructive solutions that we can do, where the word front office becomes the transparent mode of communication between the teachers and the parents.
Yeah,
And
and
now
just like in
you know what's
manufacturing, sorry, Carla.
oh yeah. So anyway, that's just basically how you kind of put everybody together. So front office has so many. Corey and I, there's not enough to say, okay, let's chill now. Let's
Yeah, no,
advertise all this stuff and make money. No, it
yeah,
doesn't work that way.
yeah. I was gonna say, and just like in manufacturing, there's there's simple tasks and complex tasks, right? So you want to automate the simple tasks, but you want to leave the complex tasks for the human brain, right?
Mhm.
Because you don't want some general output that isn't going to connect with the kids, and that's where the human still is the ultimate factor. We see a lot of products out there that are somewhat just AI automated, tutors or AI automated teachers. Unfortunately, most people and kids specifically aren't intrinsic learners. They don't have the desire to learn. Some do, right? But a very, very low percentage of them actually sit down and say, I really want to learn today, right? They just kind of want to do their thing and be kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we don't really think that the fully automation, where every task, whether it's simple or complex, is fully automated. We don't see that being the future, because we just don't. You have to use what information and data you gather from being boots on the ground. That's the source of truth, right? It's not what some technologist can dream up to maximize profits, right? Like, that eventually will fail. At least right now. I mean, honestly, I don't actually think that'll ever happen, to be quite honest, as long as human beings are around. Maybe when Skynet happens, but I I don't know if that's going to happen. I guess I'm more optimistic in thinking that won't.
Yeah, it's exciting to hear about everything that you have coming up with Swoon Learning, and the opportunities that lie ahead for the front office and what you're building. And so, that one question I'd love to ask, that it's probably my favorite question to ask our guests, is if you could give a shout out to someone in tech who's also doing something cool right now. So it could be other founders, could be a VC, anyone in tech that you think deserves recognition for the work that they're doing. I'm curious to hear who you two would recommend.
Gosh.
I have somebody in mind that he actually just had a birthday the other day. His name is Waleed Mohsen, and I worked on an application with him, which he's still working on right now. And it started off as it was called Solusive Health, and I worked on his original branding, and I worked on the application that he was building. Basically, what it does, it's called Verbal. Basically, what it does is it allows medical professionals, nurses, registered nurses, or just medical professionals to take their soap notes when they get on to a call to check in on patients, and it actually brings up like a checklist that is fully compliant, so that they can pay more attention to the patient rather than to their notes. Because as we know, the doctors, when you go see a doctor, it's actually getting better, right? They actually now have this where they start their phone and they do the transcription, right? Which is kind of what we're trying to do in the classroom. But it used to be they would just pull the computer over and they would just sit there and type on the computer and kind of look at you like every so often, right? With virtual care, it makes it even harder, because you're not in the flesh where you can actually have a computer next to you and give that body language to the people. So what this does is during the call, it basically just gives prompts, and it allows the nurse or the practitioner to check off everything so that they're compliant, and then it builds the notes afterwards. So yeah, definitely shout out to Waleed.
Awesome, that's a good one.
Actually, mine is a little less cerebral. I mean, or less product. Actually, do you know the name Andrew Luck,
Yes.
the quarterback?
Yeah, my
Yeah.
husband's a Colts fan.
Oh, wow.
So you know him really well.
Okay, yeah. If there's a way I can actually reach out to Andrew, that would be the best. Because so if you know him, let me know. So he attended Stanford for undergrad. And after he left Stanford, he went to the NFL. He got drafted by the Colts. And after, I think, how long was he there? 10 years? I think, I can't remember how long he was there.
Sounds about right.
And then he left. He just walked away.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of re-signing or going to a different team, he just walked away. And then Do you know where he ended up going?
No, I don't.
So he ended up coaching for Palo Alto High School, for a Palo Alto High School,
Hmm.
and kind of going back to the Bay Area. So I can't recall exactly which Palo Alto High School it was. But anyway, then he also and then after that, he got called back into Stanford. So he's now the director of athletics there.
Hmm.
But the thing I like about him is the fact that he understands that he could contribute not just in football, but beyond football. And he really likes teaching kids. He
Hmm.
really likes the reusability of activities and what they're doing, and then somehow be a good role model. And he said in an interview that that's the one thing he strives for, is that to be a good role model for these kids. And you can't find a lot of those in the NFL because there's so much money being thrown at your face, right? And it's hard. It's hard to say no to millions and millions of dollars. But Andrew wanted to go back into the school system, and where he feels like he's more comfortable um, honing kids and making that legacy instead. So,
Yep.
yeah, if you know somebody who knows Andrew Luck, let me know.
I didn't
Will
know that.
do.
I didn't know that he did that.
Yeah,
That's a good shout out too. Carla
yeah.
and
Sure.
Cory, this has been such a fun episode, giving you the opportunity to share about everything you've built at Swoon Learning. And I'd love to have you share with our listeners where they can find you online in case they'd like to connect.
You can go to swoonlearning.com.
Perfect. And
Or
I
you
linked
can.
to that in the show notes so that people can find you.
All right.
Great.
All right, awesome. Thank you both so much for coming on this week's episode.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Ashley.
Ashley.